Welcome to This Jungian Life. Three good friends and Jungian analysts, Lisa Marciano, Deborah Stewart, and Joseph Lee, invite you to join them for an intimate and honest conversation that brings a psychological perspective to important issues of the day.
I'm Lisa Marciano, and I'm a Jungian analyst in Philadelphia.
I'm Joseph Lee, and I'm a Jungian analyst in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
I'm Deborah Stewart, a Jungian analyst on Cape Cod.
In the United States, today is Thanksgiving. It's a day that Americans pause and reflect about what they are thankful for. So we thought it would be appropriate to take a Jungian look at gratitude. We know there's a lot of science about a gratitude practice and how that can be helpful. It can help mental health, resilience, physical health even. So we'll just visit that science briefly, but then we want to, of course, bring a Jungian perspective to it. So Deb and I are going to do our best to do that today.
So I thought maybe I would share some of the lovely, beautiful things, totally in keeping with our theme, that people have said about gratitude as the moral memory of mankind, the memory of the heart, the queen of the virtues. I liked those little quotes because they had such a lovely feeling tone, and that is very important because gratitude is not about just doing routine social thanks for, acknowledging something that we just do because we were taught to do that. And neither is it about tit for tat. You did this for me, you did me a favor, so now I have to do a favor for you. And we need to make it reciprocal. And neither is it something that we do out of obligation that, because I owe you or I should. We are, I hope, in expressing gratitude, recognizing that we are part of the great round of giving and receiving. We're given all kinds of things. We receive them, we give back. And we're participating in the great dance of the cosmos in some way, that we feel and know that we're part of something larger, and it comes from a sense of abundance. I can see your face, Lisa.
Yeah.
And I have to say that all the years that we've celebrated Thanksgiving, as many of you have too, this year and doing this podcast totally got me.
Yeah. I was thinking, Deb, I think the reason I'm getting teary, and I can't, I'm not going to be able to not get teary. So I'm just going to own it.
That's all to the good.
Yeah. You were talking about this sort of like social niceties, and I was thinking about how we teach kids to say please and thank you. And, you teach your kids to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, kids with good manners will say thank you. But I was thinking about that moment, when I was thinking about this topic, one of the things I was thinking about is that real gratitude requires, this thing that psychologists call theory of mind, right? And theory of mind is where you can kind of put yourself into another person's experience. So when you're a little kid and you ask for a glass of water and the adult gives you a glass of water and you say, thank you, it's rote, right? You don't really have an understanding of what that costs. But I was thinking about like that, when that flips and when you can sort of understand when the thank you is this deep gratitude. One of the memories that came back to me was, being a graduating from college. I lived with two of my best friends, and we invited our parents for dinner. So here it's the eve of our graduation from college. We're in this apartment. We've managed to kind of, jerry rig some kind of big table We've made this nice meal. There's the three of us, and then there's our parents sitting around. And, I was probably a very typical kind of adolescent. I was full of like drama and angst and probably a certain amount of resentment at my parents for various things. And that night at dinner, we toasted. And I remember making a toast and just saying, thank you. Duh. I mean, my parents had like put me through college. But it was the first time I think that I really was thinking about what that meant. And I still remember the look on my father's face because I think he wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
But it was like me just getting out of my own stupid adolescent head and thinking about what other people had done for me.
Yeah. And that the experience of that obviously the memory brings up of really taking that in and the undeservedness of it, that your parents had saved and maybe even gone into debt, as many parents do, that they want to give their children this opportunity, and recognizing that there were others who had stretched to do this. That does go back to the very early years of when children learn that theory of mind and develop empathy and really kind of get that from somebody else's perspective, this looks altogether different.
Yes.
Of that first little step out of your own little self. But as your memory says, then we spiral, and the same thing happens in adolescence or young adulthood or even later, that we get what it took.
Yeah, right.
For someone else to give us maybe fund a college education, but maybe come and get us at 1 a.m. on a dark, rainy night when the car broke down on the highway, and that dad or a friend or Uncle so-and-so was willing to get up and come out and pick you up on the side of the highway, or go down to the police station because you were at a party and being really rowdy.
Yeah.
And that somebody gets up and sees you through it, that senses someone else has had a generosity, and that we can be thankful for it instead of taking it for granted. This Jungian Life Dream School is our year-long online program in the art of Jungian dream analysis. We offer guidance, instruction, and community as you learn to work more deeply with your dreams. There are 12 course modules, each with audio, video, and written materials, as well as a curated reading list. You'll be invited to join monthly live meetings with the three of us and to connect with fellow dream schoolers in our thriving online community. And this year, we are offering 10% off Dream School for the holidays. Just use the code HOLIDAY2025 when you check out anytime between now and the 31st of December. And you can also use this code to purchase Dream School as a gift for someone you love. Visit our website, thisjungianlife.com, to learn more, and we look forward to seeing many of you in Dream School in time for 2026.
I'll give you another example that, when we were in training, there were all of these requirements. We had to do this reading. We had to write these papers. We had to get these case presentations. We had to attend all this stuff. And, I know that we at certain times, and I think I'm speaking for both of us, felt a little put upon or, impinged upon somehow, maybe a little bit resentful about everything that we were being asked to do. And if we had a run-in with one of our evaluators, we felt really salty about it. And, and then you get through training. And I think I didn't really have much feeling about the training experience other than I'm going to be a good student. I'm going to get through it. Then you turn around, you graduate on the other side. And suddenly they hand you the reins and they say, great, now you're going to run the seminar. You're going to teach the candidates. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so much work. That you really don't get paid for. There's a tiny little honorarium, but you really don't get paid for it. And suddenly I was overcome with profound gratitude of all of the people, all of the analysts who through the years had spent time, had given their time to me and my training. And I will never take that for granted again, but it was very similar. The thing about gratitude is it's a moment that pops you out of your solipsism. When I was in college, it was like me, and oh my God, I've got this paper and I've got this exam. And I didn't think about, well, who made this whole thing possible? I mean, obviously I knew that at some level, but on a feeling sense or in training, it's like, oh, got to do this, this, and this. And yeah, I knew the other analysts were there, but that feeling, that emotional experience of, wow, somebody did this for me.
So there's a developmental growth around gratitude from the routine social thanks or the tit for tat stuff. I remember going through that as a kid.
Right.
Of, you did this, so now it's my turn, taking turns and all of that. But that place that we're so aware of now, that breakthrough moment where we get that it was undeserved and people really put themselves out for us. That experience of gratitude, of you gave me something. I was thinking this was probably going to get me. I had a tough time as a teenager, all kinds of family stuff and big long lists.
Mm-hmm.
And we had belonged to this very nice church, very liberal. They had a fellowship, a junior pilgrim fellowship for junior high school students, senior pilgrim fellowship for high school students. And I thought about, I never thanked the associate minister and the seminarian who did so much for us. And it saw me through difficult, troubling, lonely years. That every week there was that, and we played games, and there were some serious discussions, and they organized dances for us. I had a place to belong. I had a home, and I never thanked them. And what it must have taken to do this every week, and then the retreats and the dances. It was a steady stream of generosity.
And there is a way, I mean, I think that people say of parenthood, for example, you can't, but maybe it's not just parenthood, you can't repay someone, but you can pay it forward.
Yes. And that, hopefully, when we get it, gives us a place of abundance, of, oh my goodness, I'll reach out to you. You filled me up. Let me give you a little something.
So I'll tell a funny story about paying it forward or repaying it. I guess it was like my first Mother's Day after I became a mom, and my husband had a great comment that I still chuckle at. He said, I can't believe all these years I've been sending my mother a card. I should have been buying her a new car every year. This is so hard. And I think that really captures it, right?
Here is a wonderful poem by Billy Collins, who was, I think, the poet laureate for the United States at one point. And he writes a poem called The Lanyard. The other day, as I was ricocheting slowly off the pale blue walls of this room, bouncing from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor. I found myself in the L section of the dictionary where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one more suddenly into the past, a past where I sat at a workbench at a camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift from my mother. I'd never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one, if that's what you did with them. But that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breast, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted teaspoons of medicine to my lips, set cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim. And I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, and here's clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here's a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read to the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is a lanyard I made at camp. And here I wish to say to her now is a smaller gift, not the archaic truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the 2-tone lanyard from my hands, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even.
That's the place where we usually live, right? It's like, here's a lanyard.
It's, of course, we were talking about the developmental awarenesses.
Right.
Of here's a, maybe a 10-year-old boy. And so there's both. There's the poignance that every mother receives these gifts from her children that often are instigated by their teachers, that it's Mother's Day or Christmas or something, and we're all going to make something. And we do receive them with the appropriate gratitude for the thoughtfulness of a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 20-year-old or even older, that we get that is the stage of heart that is appropriate to that age and stage of this younger person. And we also get from this poem that we can't repay these kinds of gifts, that what you were talking about that was so moving, of the realization of what your parents had done to put you through college, of really getting the value of the gift and when we acknowledge it, it's incredibly moving.
Well, I think it's that shift. I mean, one of the things that's so brilliant about that poem is that last stanza, where he basically says, I thought we were even.
Yeah.
And it's yes, that is like a developmental stage of childhood. But I'm sort of thinking, well, we repeat that again and again because, I didn't really realize what I was taking for granted when I was in college. I didn't realize when I was in training, I didn't know what I was taking for granted. What am I taking for granted right now? I don't know, So there's new opportunities in every stage of life to become aware of how we are invisibly supported. Invisible to us, anyway.
Exactly. And so I think, we're also circling around awareness of, in that Billy Collins poem, of course, his boyhood self was not that aware.
Right.
You had a moment of tremendous awareness of the magnitude. And I hear you about training. I honestly, and God knows I was old enough to know better. But it was given without any intimation of what it cost our teachers in time and preparation and generosity and showing up when they had other obligations of their own. And there they were for us to pass on the gifts that they had been given by their teachers. And then all of a sudden, I remember that moment of like, you mean me? I don't know that I have it to give. I don't know enough. I don't know that I'm worthy.
Mm.
And yet, there's the call. Show up, be who you are. Give what you have as others did that for you. And it was not a repayment.
No.
But it was a stepping into the tradition that, of course, I'm not ready. Of course, I don't know enough, but I'm going to do it anyway.
You know, one of the themes in everything we've talked about so far in this episode is that when you're granted a great gift, you don't know what you've been given. And the gratitude only comes later. I don't know that that's always true, but I am noticing that that's what our theme has been so far.
Yes.
You know, there are other times when perhaps you're granted a great gift, when you have an overwhelming, immediate sense of gratitude. But perhaps it's often true that gratitude only comes later, that really understanding what you've been given only comes later.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. And then how do we say thank you? We pass on what we have to pass on, that it's often not reciprocal that we can thank the giver. Instead, we have our own abundance from which to offer something. And I'll tell a story about serving my very, very first patients in a community mental health clinic. And I had no idea what to give them. I didn't know enough. But the idea that you give what you have. And all I could think about as I was about to see people as clients was, what do I have to give them? I don't have years of experience. I don't have piles of wisdom. But what do I have to offer them? And what came up was the image of offering people a sandwich. That it would be like offering someone lunch. And that I could offer them a sandwich and a slice of pickle and some chips. And that's what I wanted to give. That's what I had to give. And it made the gratitude and the act of giving seem so much more possible for me. And it took me out of my own ego that I had to know everything and be wise and skilled and all the rest of it. It was very humbling. All I have to offer you is a sandwich, but here it is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're hungry, it's food. It will feed you.
Mm-hmm. You know, you talked about sort of getting out of your own ego, and I think that that's another common denominator, right? And that's why, there is all this silence about the benefits of gratitude. And I think it's because, and you talked about the feeling tone, which obviously we've both been feeling this morning as we were recording, but it does evoke this feeling of this kind of humility and a sense of being in relationship to something larger.
Yes.
And it is exactly that it's what Jung called the relativization of the ego. Let's say, like there I was in college, like I know that I probably was kind of a pain in the ass because I was just like, stress, exams, papers, I was in my ego and I've got to do really well and I've got to, But it's like, whoa, it's that where's the broader perspective, And I think that there's this Polynesian saying that Joseph Campbell has mentioned that I really love. So in Polynesia, they say, standing on the back of a whale, fishing for minnows. And fishing for minnows is what we do every day in our ego life. And only rarely do we even become aware that we're standing on the back of a whale.
Yeah.
So to understand the sort of the transpersonal basis of our lives and how we're connected to our ancestors, how we're invisibly supported by all the people who have given us things, that wider, broader perspective is standing on the whale. And I think that's the perspective that gratitude invites. So when you're fishing for minnows, there I was in college, like fishing for minnows, like, I got to finish 300 pages of reading.
Right.
Instead of like, oh my God, look at how incredibly lucky I am.
Yeah. I want to take us to Jung and a beautiful story of this wider perspective from which gratitude can spring. He was traveling and he was meeting with the Pueblo Indians. And he's meeting with a group of people, and he says, suddenly, a deep voice, vibrant with suppressed emotion, spoke from behind me into my left ear. Do you not think that all life comes from the mountain? An elderly Indian had come up to me inaudible in his moccasins and had asked me this heaven knows how far-reaching question. A glance at the river pouring down from the mountain showed me the outward image that had engendered this conclusion. Obviously, all life came from the mountains, for where there is water, there is life. Nothing could be more obvious. In his question, I felt a swelling emotion connected with the word mountain and thought of the tale of secret rites celebrated on the mountain. I replied, everyone can see that you spoke the truth. And then these conversations go on, and another person says, they're trying to understand the American misunderstanding or lack of understanding about their religion. And he says, we do nothing to harm the Americans. Why can't they let us alone? What we do not only for ourselves, but for the Americans also. Yes, we do it for the whole world. Everyone benefits from it. I could observe from his excitement that he was alluding to some extremely important element of his religion. I therefore asked him, you think then that what you do in your religion benefits the whole world? He replied with great animation, of course. If we did not do it, what would become of the world? And with a significant gesture, he pointed to the sun. I felt we were approaching extremely delicate ground here, verging on the mysteries of the tribe. After all, he said, we're a people who live on the roof of the world. We are the sons of Father's Son, and with our religion, we daily help our Father to go across the sky. We do this not only for ourselves, but for the whole world. If we were to cease practicing our religion in 10 years, the sun would no longer rise. Then it would be night forever. I then realized on what the dignity, the tranquil composure of the individual Indian was founded. It springs from his being a son of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
His life is cosmologically meaningful, for he helps the Father and Preserver of all life in his daily rise and descent. And there is gratitude, and we've been talking implicitly about the generosity to give back, of the great round of being given to, receiving, and giving back, this great cycle of life, the great round, and knowing that we're part of something greater.
I was thinking what you were reading, Deb, that that gratitude is sort of like the opposite of resentment. And resentment is such like a kind of poisonous emotion. I mean, I'm not saying that sometimes it's not totally justified. I'm not saying that we shouldn't feel resentment, but if you indulge in resentment, it poisons your life. It really does. So if you feel resentment, you need to deal with it, not dismiss it, not deny it, but deal with it. But there's that thing about which wolf do you feed. The reason that that's powerful, I think, the thing about feeding wolves is because you can rest into resentment and just like churn that through your brain again and again and again. It's like, oh, but you perseverate on it, you ruminate on it. My God, he did this to me, whatever. And it's like some of that is helpful, but there's a point beyond which you're just like feeding a bad wolf. And I think you can also kind of do the same thing with gratitude, right? Like, and this is the whole idea behind a gratitude practice is you can kind of like hack your brain basically by thinking about like, God, all the things that you're grateful for, and it will change your state. And it will change your attitude, and you can just like hack right into that. I'm going to try to do a little tiny bit of neurobiology, which I'm sure I will make a total hatchet job of. But they're sort of like two neurobiological systems. One is the approach or the appetitive emotions, the pro-social emotions that draw us to each other or to something. It might be food, it might be, a relationship, but it's like we're open and we're moving toward life. And then there's the aversive kind of neurobiological pattern, and that's fear and defense and anger and that kind of thing. And it's like they both have their role, but you also want to notice where you are. Where are you? Because there's an extent to which you can choose where you are. Not all the time, not 100%. Sometimes something happens and it gets you really angry and worked up, and you need to be in that defensive, angry, resentful place so that you can work it through and figure out how to protect yourself. I'm not saying that's bad, but if that's where you're idling, that will take a toll on your mental health and possibly even your physical health. And so I think that the idea behind like doing a gratitude practice is to actually choose to make that shift into that other place, that open-hearted place, that place of approach. So the neurobiologist, please, write in and correct me, but that's my understanding of it. And I think again, it goes back to the kind of feelings that this topic has generated in us.
Oh.
And again, to just sort of put it into Jungian language, and to go back to that beautiful passage that you just read, it's about understanding. The thing is that when we're feeling defensive and resentful and angry, first of all, we're the center of the universe, right?
Right.
And in a sense, our life is very small.
Right. Look what happened to me.
That's right. When we can open up into that approach space, that appetitive space, where we are saying, my life has cosmological meaning. I am part of this great round. Then wow, that's an open-hearted space, and it brings to mind. I'm just pulling up this beautiful quote that we have read before, and I have certainly quoted before in my books. This is from Memories, Dreams, Reflections. The decisive question for man is he related to something infinite or not? That is the telling question of his life. And I think, and that's even related to the minnows and the whale. It's like when you can relate to the infinite,
Yeah.
then you are in right relationship with these larger forces, and gratitude gives us access to that.
I think that in a way is the whole heart of today's podcast is the story of the Pueblo Indians, which I've read about before. Somehow I got it at a bigger level, that from the developmental stance of a child through your young adult experience of gratitude to your parents, of all of a sudden this Thanksgiving being part of something bigger and appreciating the value that these things, the meaning that they have, and really taking it in some new way. It's an astonishing realization that all the words are really a way of trying to capture the feeling, where Jung got it with the Pueblo, and Billy Collins got it with the lanyard. You got it, I got it, and it's sort of like the special secret to everything of how much there is to notice and take in and be responsive to. And I want to take up your point about, yes, we feel resentment and we get angry or we're in a bad mood or so we're not talking so much about not feeling those feelings or doing sort of a spiritual bypass where those things don't exist anymore. They do exist. But I liked how you said it of let's not linger there. Let's not put our engine on idle and stay there over long. Let's add to it other realizations that help us practice and really be proactive with ourselves about gratitude. So, all the things that I listened to and read about and thought about of, you can do a gratitude journal. It's really about, does it touch your heart? This is really real. And then you're a rich person. You have an abundance.
I want to talk for a minute, picking up on that, about gratitude and individuation. Because I think what the neurobiologists call prosocial or appetitive or any of those terms is kind of like the approach system. The way I think about that is it tracks with this quality that I think of as open-heartedness. And a number of years ago, when I was working on my first book on motherhood, I wanted to talk about individuation, and I wanted to talk about Jung's idea of individuation in a really sort of like practical way. I was like, what does it really mean? So I went through all of I went through the index of the collected works, and I read all of the entries on individuation. And I, read a couple books about individuation. I was like, what is that? What is that? And one of the ways I sort of condensed it for myself was individuation requires you to move through the world in an open-hearted way, so that whatever comes toward you, whether it's a difficult, challenging experience, you take it in, if it's heartbreak, and you allow it to change you. If you experience something wonderful, you allow yourself to feel that too. And it is this sort of expansiveness. And I think we all know people who approach life that way. And then we know people who are sort of shut down. And when something bad happens to them, they do sort of stay in resentment and they just kind of grind on that thematically again and again. And those people, even when something good happens to them, sometimes it's hard to stay with that. And or they experience the good thing, but they do it very comparatively, like, well, what I got was better than what this other person got or something like that. So I think we can all kind of intuitively, at least I can, really feel that difference between kind of open-heartedness is the quality that I wound up feeling was like sort of essential for individuation, for this idea of kind of becoming the fullest version of ourselves possible. And it strikes me today that gratitude is one of the keys to open-heartedness. It's one of the keys that can unlock that state, that kind of emotional, affective state of open-heartedness. And I would say that the other two emotions that I think are closely related are awe and reverence.
Reverence is a very, very big, and it takes me back to Jung's friend who was named Mountain Lake in the Pueblo community. And what I read of the reverence for just being alive and being on the earth and being part of something greater, to help Father Son in his travels every day. Now that is open-hearted. I like your word. I think that's what I went into that first week of seeing my first psychotherapy clients with is I'm open-hearted, and what I have to offer you is a ham and cheese sandwich and a pickle. It's not so much about ourselves and what we want or our own inadequacy that what I have to offer you isn't enough, that there is that sense of appreciation and humility and being willing to make our own ego smaller just to be part of something greater, of a moment, a session, an initial session with a client, that here I am. And it's not just about me, and it's not even just about you and me, whoever the you is. It goes to that third thing that we learned about over and over again, the third, that there is another presence, there is another dynamic, that the you and the me generates something, a third thing, that there is a sustaining other current in an interpersonal transaction, or in this beautiful sense of helping the sun to go across the sky to help the whole world. We do it for the whole world. Is the most beautiful act of reverence and generosity. Participating in the great round. I'm thinking too about the other religious traditions that emphasize gratitude. For the Jewish Seder, there's a song, Dayenu, and it's a beautiful song. I go on YouTube and listen to a rendition of it if you want. But the song is about, if God had just given us this, it would have been enough. But no, God gave us this and this and this and this and this. The appreciation. There's a spiritual component to 12-step programs, to AA, the original 12-step program, in which Jung corresponded with Bill Wilson. And gratitude is woven all throughout, because if we stay stuck in the bad things that happen to us or our misfortunes and what we don't have, it's a narrow, small, sad, confining, unrewarding place to be.
To go back to my earlier attempt at this, I think that when we're in that kind of like noticing what's wrong, noticing what's lacking, feeling resentful, then we're really just with the minnows and we're not seeing the whale. And I don't know if gratitude, like, I don't know what the causal effect is. If when we find gratitude, then we realize we're standing on the whale, or we realize we're standing on the whale and we feel gratitude. But those two things are really, really linked. It's a real perspectival shift, right? Where we go from, well, like me being a college student, like feeling very wrapped up in myself, about, I don't know, whatever it was I was wrapped up in, I was, when you're 22, what are you wrapped up in? Like all that stuff, to being like, oh my God, there's this whole other way of looking at this situation. It's like, duh. But it was a real click for me.
I'm going back to your relating all this to individuation and being open-hearted and moving into the fullness of our being. That has to come from a realization of some kind of abundance, of opening ourselves rather than closing ourselves up. And then we have those moments when we realize we're standing on the back of a whale.
Right.
And even sometimes, just the smallest things can light us up and strike a chord. I think I have to say this. It keeps coming back to me. Of course, like, I don't know how many millions of people, I bought a turkey and I'm going to pick it up. But I never actually thought to be thankful to that turkey. Something lived. It gave its life to be at our Thanksgiving tables. And I don't think it had a very good life. But I'm profoundly grateful for the sacrifice and for the import, the magnitude that something really did die in order to give me and all our family this particularly incredible meal. I think about the archetypal roots of saying grace, which is acknowledging that something died so that we could live. There's a tradition in deer hunting that when you kill the deer, it shakes the hunter, who often has a moment of real physiological reaction to the import of what he has just done.
Mm-hmm.
And then the hunter goes and gets a handful of grass and puts it in the dead deer's mouth so that it will have food for the journey. This great round of life and death and the gratitude and this symbolic giving back to the animal, to give it something for its journey in a symbolic way. And we give back by saying grace.
You pointed out the role of gratitude in religious traditions. And I mean, I think that that's a major part of every religion that I can think of.
Uh-huh.
That humans express their gratitude to the gods for the gifts granted. It's sort of a foundational thing in most religious traditions. In one way or another, there are rituals, prayers of gratitude.
And we are grateful for this life with all of its difficulties. And of course, some people live incredibly difficult lives of want. And yet we are here and we cling to life. And we will be here for some limited amount of time. And how do we, in whatever circumstances we're in, how do we live our best life, appreciate it, just recognize it in something as foundational and obvious and present as that incredibly moving story of helping the sun make its daily journey across the sky. We can do that.
So I'm also thinking about gratitude toward the unconscious.
Hmm.
And the unconscious is something that we usually take for granted. And the unconscious is, Marie Louise von Franz talks about this so beautifully. It's like the origin of all creativity. Talk about something that invisibly supports us. The unconscious does that every single day. And how often do we turn toward it with gratitude? And one of the things I think about is, that book that they, for no good reason that I can understand, when you have a baby, somebody will give you the book, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. And it's sort of a horrifying book. I'm not really sure why we read it to kids all the time. But as I was sitting with that book as a young mother and a Jungian analytic candidate, I was like, what is this about? And I decided that it says something about our habitual relationship to the unconscious, perhaps. That we just expect it to give and give and give and give. And it does. It does. But how much more generative that relationship could be with the unconscious if we could express gratitude toward it. And for my money, cultivating a dream work practice is part of how we can do that. I think when you wake up in the morning and you've been gifted a dream, I mean, what an incredible gift. If you reach for your dream journal and you write it down and you think about it or you draw it, you know, that's a way of sort of expressing gratitude to the unconscious for that gift.
Right.
So, you know, and it's just been incredible in dream school recently to see this burgeoning of creativity and energy through our dream studio. So by the way, we invite you to check that out. But just in general, I want to say, let's make room to give thanks to the unconscious.
Yes. And it's gifts that we can draw, journal about, imagine. It gives us more of ourselves, more life. We should learn, appreciate, use what we have been every night so generously given again and again.
Yeah, in a way, it takes me back to the lanyard, you know, because it's like there the unconscious is, just every idea you have, you know, it's like, it's just this abundance. And we just don't even think about it most of the time. Well, I know that I am grateful to all of our listeners. I know you mean a lot to all of us.
We are very grateful to you and for your your interest and your appreciation. It goes both ways. We know you're out there and that we belong to a community. This week's dreamer is a woman who is 67 years old. She's a retired librarian and library administrator. And she has titled her dream, "You Have to Find Another Way." Here's the dream. I was driving down a highway, and everything along the roadway was very green, and the sun was shining. Suddenly, I had to stop because there were doors across the roadway in both directions. The doors were white and looked like the interior doors of my house, only much larger. There was a small building next to the doors, and inside I found a young man. I asked him about the doors, and he said, yes, they blocked it. You have to find another way. In the distance, I could see a couple of other cars that were going in different directions. He opened a plastic box and told me he would give me some magic mushrooms if I wanted them. He asked if I would use them because he didn't want to give them to me if I wouldn't use them. I said yes. The mushrooms were also tinted green. I thanked him, took the mushrooms, and headed back to my car. I considered going off-road and driving around the building and the doors to continue my journey in the direction I had been heading, but didn't know if I should be driving in the field. In other words, that it might be an improper thing to do. And then I woke up. So for context, she says, I've been recovering at home from surgical complications for the last 6 months and had to stop most activities, including art classes. I had been studying botanical illustration and completed all coursework, but there were significant administrative problems, and the program imploded. I have been stuck artistically since then and torn between continuing with the laborious and time-consuming practice of scientific botanical illustration, or a looser, more joyful style, which I seem to find very hard to do. Also, I ask myself, what is the point of doing either? Although I had been teaching others nature journaling as a response to climate crisis and to find purpose and meaning in that, the main feelings in the dream, she says, were confusion, being suddenly thwarted and not knowing what to do. And she adds, the field related to botanical illustration is associated with her dream. The doors across the roadway, the same as the interior doors of my home, where I've been stuck in recovery, but now starting to get out again, though not fully recovered. The car I was driving was my car.
One of the things that I pay attention to in dreams is when a non-dream ego figure speaks. I'm always like, what is that for? What, it's like significant. And this person clearly thought that was significant too, right? Because she makes it the title of the dream. You have to find another way. Well, that's pretty clear. I mean, the dream is saying the road is blocked. You can't go this way. I kind of love that she can see other cars driving in other directions because it's like she knows there is another way. She doesn't maybe know how to get there yet, but I think that's the significance of seeing these other cars. It's like, well, there is another way. But right now she's just blocked. And I think it's interesting that it's the same doors that are in her house. It's like we can get blocked because we only see what we already know. So for me, I'm really curious about this man. I'd love, if I had the dreamer here, I'd love to know more about him, what he looked like, did he remind her of anybody, all of that. But the sort of big money image in the dream are the mushrooms.
I was wondering when you were going to get there.
So what do we think of the mushrooms?
I love this dream figure who says, first of all, you have to find another way. And then he offers her magic mushrooms. He offers a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, and will you accept them? Will you use my gift? And here we've been talking about gratitude. And part of gratitude is to really accept and value the gift and not just take it for granted or, oh, yeah, thanks a lot, and keep moving. And what is this gift, symbolically speaking, in the dream? It's a kind of promise of transcendence,
Mm-hmm.
An altered state of consciousness.
A very new perspective.
A new perspective, another way. But our dream ego, like our waking egos, she goes back to the literalization of life. Then she says, oh, okay, maybe I should just go off-road and drive around the building. And he's offering a whole change of consciousness. Change your conscious attitude. Go to something altogether different. Forget the car. Forget the literal road.
Yes. But I do want to say too, I was thinking about this and of course, again, if I were working with the streamer, I'd want to know what's her experience of, psilocybin mushrooms and has she ever done that or what does she think about that? But because I mean, it is, I think what you're saying is 100% there, but I found myself thinking a little bit more broadly about mushrooms. Mushrooms are, first of all, she makes the connection with this botanical illustration. Mushrooms are a very particular kind of life form because they're very earthy, right?
Uh-huh.
They grow in the earth. And they grow, I think all of them do, but certainly a lot of them do. They grow from a rhizome. So, and I know that people that study mycology talk about like these incredible networks underground that apparently are very important for trees and this kind of stuff. You can see I'm at the very edge of my knowledge and my ability to talk about it. But I think it does call up, in addition to the psychedelic properties of magic mushrooms, I'm just thinking about mushrooms. Jung used the idea of the rhizome, very movingly wrote about it as a metaphor for the collective unconscious, that we are all just like a single mushroom. A mushroom is like a fruit of this much larger organism, right? So Jung said something very similar to that. Like we're just one manifestation of the greater organism that we're connected to. So I think the image of mushrooms might also be calling our attention to the sort of like transpersonal foundation of our life. And because it's not, I don't know, it's not a vial of LSD that he's offering, or it's a mushroom.
I hear that, and I'm appreciating the specificity that the dream maker can provide to get us to do exactly that. That it's not just an altered state of consciousness, but it's this particular item, the mushroom that is connected with this web that goes way underground, is somewhat mysterious, but worldwide, and everything's connected.
And so if I were the dreamer, if I were going to look at sort of what's the medicine, I mean, I suppose some people might say, well, I'm going to go do a psilocybin trip. And maybe that's part of what the dream is recommending. But I think I would also say, where am I not seeing the web of the eternal archetypal images that lie beneath my feet? Where can I tap into those energies and images in my life?
I think it's both. The image of the mushroom, especially magic mushrooms, promise us both, the above and the below. And our dreamer talks about, I wonder if it's connected to her artistic coursework and her interest and skill, I'm sure, in botanical illustration. So, of course, it would be an actual mushroom and not a powder or a pill or whatever else. And then she says she's been stuck artistically and caught between the laborious and time-consuming practice of scientific botanical illustration, which I'm sure must be very exact to render things correctly, or a looser, more joyful style, which I seem to find very hard to do. And I wonder about that in connection with the magic mushrooms. It can be both the grounded skills and something that is more individual, more joyful, more transcendent, of lighten up, loosen up, enjoy.
Get out of that smaller perspective and into the larger perspective.
Thanks for listening. To submit a dream, suggest an episode topic, or join our mailing list, visit our website, thisjungianlife.com. If you enjoyed this episode, give us 5 stars and a good review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure to click the notification bell to be alerted whenever we upload videos. And keep up with all things TJL by following us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok.